back, everyone. We are continuing our conversation with our political analysts, Antoine Seawright and Joel Sawyer, talking about the historic guilty conviction for former President Donald Trump, the first time this has ever happened to someone who has held the title of president. Before the break, we were talking about what this means and the implications of the political landscape, being that we are right around the corner from the November presidential election. But I want to talk about July 11th.
Right.
That is the date that former President Donald Trump, now convicted felon, is supposed to receive his sentencing. However, that is 4 days prior to the RNC, where he is supposed to be announced as the official nominee for the Republican Party. Joel, I mean, does that affect the polls at that point? Do you think that kind of steers his supporters away, or again, do you think that really just pumps them to support him?
Yeah, I mean, the people who are for him are going to be even more for him now, right? Yeah. You know, in terms of the timing, you know, my gut is that it will be some sort of combination of probation, fine, something like that. I don't think the jail is realistically in the cards for him. It's a nonviolent offender, victimless crime, first ever offense for anything that he's been convicted of. So if you're going to treat him like you're supposed to treat everybody else, I mean, all of those factors would say no jail time, right? So we'll see how it shakes out. But look, they're gonna fundraise off this until the cows come home.
Right. So. Meanwhile, while Republicans will fundraise off of this, on the other side, Antoine, Democrats, meanwhile, just being able to use the title of convicted felon from now until the election, how effective do you think that is? And just kind of basing that off the reaction of Democrats the day that this came down, it would seem like they're hoping that this moniker will stick.
Well, let's start with the rule of law prevailed. And I think as Americans, we should applaud that, because all of these bogus attacks on the justice system by some from the very privileged in this country, to me, is a whole bunch of foolishness. Because as a Black American, I've seen the judicial system bend for people who look like me, break for people who look like me, and bend for others. A jury unanimously convicted him of 34 crimes, essentially. And so the rule of law prevailed. As Americans, we should be okay with that, even if we do not agree politically with the president or against the president. As it relates to the Democrats, I don't think this should be the thing we hang our hat on. There's a political system, and then there's a judicial system. We settle our differences and our disputes in this country at the ballot box. So it is required of us to keep expressing ourselves with the displeasures, the contempt, the happiness, or the dissatisfaction of our elected officials at the ballot box. Vice President Harris, President Biden, Democrats, we have an accomplished record that we should be able to easily sell to the American people, thinking about traditional ways we measure a president and a vice president. Compare that to 4 years of the former president, I would take Joe Biden and Kamala Harris any day of the week. Now, you're going to see over the next couple of days, weeks, and months, people attack the system. They're going to say it wasn't fair, the same way they said the election was rigged. However, I think we as Americans should know that just because people say it, and just because we may agree with them politically, do not mean it's true. And so I think Democrats have to stay focused with our message, with our intent, and reminding the American people what's at stake in this election for the sake of the future of this country, but also the existential threat that comes along with Donald Trump and Trumpism.
I want to talk about the reaction from Trump allies. Of course, we heard from Governor Henry McMaster, Attorney General Alan Wilson, Senator Lindsey Graham, but we did not hear from Nikki Haley, who just last week said that she would be voting for Trump, and Trump said he, quote, believes that Haley would be on the team in some form. Does that shock you that she hasn't put out a statement yet?
Not in the slightest. You know, I think Nikki Haley is going to continue to do the bare minimum that Nikki Haley can do in terms of supporting Donald Trump, in terms of saying, I'm going to vote for him. And that's all she said. And I think that's probably all she's going to say. You know, I think that, you know, to a degree, to appear to be on the team, I mean, all of these Republicans are going to have to say that, you know, similar talking points in terms of the trial being a sham, et cetera. You know, I just want to emphasize, I agree with Antoine, or, you know, what he said earlier about respecting the rule of law. But, this thing is going to go to appeal. And he is, you never know what could happen on an appeal. I think that there are some issues with the way these charges were presented to the jury that will make a pretty smart appeal for the Trump team. And, we'll see how it shakes out.
All in all, do you think that this helps or hurts in the long run?
I think it's impossible to answer that. I mean, look, it's going to help in some regards, it's going to hurt in some regards. This is going to be such a close election determined by a small number of people in a small number of states. It's impossible to say.
All right, Antoine, same question for you. Help or hurt?
Oh, I think it's too early to tell. But I would just say to my Democratic friends, or even those who may not identify with the Democratic Party, but identify with the future of this country and preserving democracy and freedom as we know it, just because Donald Trump is in trouble legally, or just because he may or may not be on the ballot, who knows what that's going to mean. We're in uncharted territory here. You defeat Trumpism and Trump at the ballot box, not in the courthouse. And if you want to keep him out of the White House, you don't depend on that happening in the courthouse. It's all at the ballot box. And we have to continue expressing ourselves as Americans at the ballot box. And when those votes are cast and counted, we must accept the results of those elections, regardless of whether our candidate wins or not.
And I do want to make sure that we let our viewers know that President Biden did comment today during his address to the nation about the verdict. Here's what he had to say.
That's how the American system of justice works. And it's reckless, it's dangerous, it's irresponsible for anyone to say this was rigged just because they don't like the verdict.
Now, Trump has claimed that this is the Biden administration that has him in court, although this was spearheaded by authorities in Manhattan and New York. What do you think for those who may think that it is a political punch at Trump?
Look, I mean, the district attorney is a partisan figure. One of his campaign promises was to hold Trump accountable. He did not specifically promise to prosecute him, but he talked about accountability for people, no matter their social status, et cetera. Look, I mean, you can't deny the fact that this is a Democratic assistant attorney that prosecuted him. Antoine, I mean, those facts are not in dispute. It is a Democratic prosecutor who prosecuted him. He's an elected partisan. That being said, I mean, you do have to respect the rule of law and respect the outcome.
Antoine, I know you're itching to respond.
This is a duly elected person.
He's duly elected and promised to hold Trump accountable.
Joe, he was a duly elected prosecutor.
Correct.
Elected by the people, who has a history of prosecuting crimes just like this, regardless of what party the person identifies with. I would suggest to you or anyone else who has a problem with this case, go back and look at the history. If Donald Trump wasn't the former president of the United States, and the same case was presented, same facts and so forth, no one would be pissed off about the verdict. But instead, because they want to insert former President Donald Trump, all of a sudden people are mad. But I guarantee you, if it was Joe Biden, former President Joe Biden, former President Barack Obama, former former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, the world would be imploding right now. I think we have to separate the two. And then there was evidence and a jury unanimously deciding these things. No one asked a question about what party those jurors identified with. They had a job to do the same way the prosecutor has a job to do. And the same thing in Georgia and every other place, Trump will have to be held accountable for the deeds that he committed.
Well, certainly the debate will continue as we inch ever closer to the November election. We appreciate it, Antoine and Joel. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right, when we return, we'll get a check of the weather and traffic with Vaughn.